My name is Richard Ferrer, and I can say I am cloud hired.
That yes, come and join and get cloud hired. I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
Hey, Go Cloud Architect family. I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired, guys.
So I'll just say I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired thanks to Go Cloud Architects.
It worked for me, and now I'm cloud hired.
Because of Google Architect program, I am cloud hired.
See!
I am cloud hired. Thank you, Mike and the GlowCloud team.
Welcome, everyone. We are here to talk about why cloud job descriptions are completely ridiculous. We're also here to talk about why these bad job descriptions have hurt so many people. Because most people, when they want to break into a career, they want to learn the skills for their career. And the reality is many people, unfortunately, turn to job descriptions. And we're going to show you evidence from people that are executives at Amazon, from various HR magazines, from various big publications like Forbes and many others, where they all talk about the problem of job descriptions being absolutely worthless. I can tell you when I started my career, I never had more than 10% of the skills on any job description. And truthfully, I've been hired on every interview and usually for a better one because I had the skills the employer needed. And you too, all of you can get any career you want, any job you want, as long as you have the right skills and attributes employers want. But we are here talking about the dangerous job descriptions, how these ridiculous cloud job descriptions for cloud engineers, which aren't related to engineering, or cloud architect jobs, which aren't related to cloud architecture, or enterprise architect jobs that are not related to airplane flying, for example. But we can talk about it with a wide variety of tech careers, which we're going to do. We're going to have a little fun with it because it's a really important topic. And we will show you example after example. Now, Chris from my team actually has a collection of resources. He's the analytical person on my team, so he's going to have citations. So he's going to guide today's discussion. I'll be answering questions. He'll be asking me things in more of an interview as he presents things. So we're going to have fun with it. So give me a hashtag crazy cloud job description so I know that you are here. And this is so much an important topic that invite a friend or tell others afterwards to go see this. So I hope you really enjoy this discussion. I hope you have it. Chris, make any announcements of any free things that we have coming up for people. I know you're more on top of it than I am. And then let's get this started because I'm all excited to talk about the ridiculous cloud descriptions.
Yeah. All right. Well, I am excited to be here. So the first thing that I want to make sure everybody is actually the only thing that I want to make sure everybody is aware about. And no, never mind. I got a couple of things. All right. So first of all, in line with this, we've got a free winning the interview guide that we're going to share with all of you. Make sure you get your copy of that. The link is about to be in the job description, the chat box. The link is about to be in the chat box. Give me a second to put it in the chat box here. In case you can't tell, job descriptions are on our mind. In case it wasn't obvious. So there we go. So we got the winning the interview free guide. And then the other thing that I want to make sure everybody is aware about is our the end of year sale. We've got 50% off right now through the end of the year with code year end. So I'm going to put a link in the chat box as well to our training portal so that you can take a look at all of those and see if there's any type of training that interests you if you desire to be an architect, a cloud architect, a Gen AI architect, enterprise architect, or if you're looking to improve your leadership skills or your interview skills, there is content there for you. So I've got that in the chat box there as well. So now that I got the mundane stuff out of the way, let's get to the fun stuff. So if you followed us long enough, you know that Mike and I talk about this all the time. And it goes back to the basic premise of if you start from a bad position, you're going to end in a bad position. Garbage in, garbage out, all that concept. And so, and for those of you that don't know, Mike clearly has got, I don't know what direction. I'm backwards. Oh yeah, I'm backwards. Okay, this is, I'm out of, okay, this is going to take a second. When I get done talking, I'm going to switch myself. So be prepared for that, everybody. So the, Mike's got an extensive, this is gonna kill me. Mike has an extensive background in helping people reach their goals and helping people get the jobs that they desire. I have a background that started off in human resources. I was the hiring coordinator for a company. I was the big bad wolf as it comes to job descriptions. And then I was a hiring manager, and then I, worked in various roles. But I started in HR, and so that's why this topic of conversation is dear to me, so to speak, because I have been screaming from the rooftops since 2008 that the system is broken. It was broken before then, but it's been broken since then. But we talk about this all the time, and about a week ago, we saw a post, and we're going to share. I'm going to share it on screen here. This is from an individual that's retired. They were a vice president at Amazon, and they just came right out and said it. And then they acknowledged that they're going to get a lot of flack for saying it. But that's how it goes. So I'm going to share this with you. I'm also going to put the link to their post in the chat box, just so you can go and read it for yourself as well. So, when I share my screen, I can't see what I'm sharing. Okay, so it's sharing. Okay, so basically, here we go. Job descriptions are CRAP if you're English. If you're not English, I just spelled CRAP. All right, buckle up. The topic makes me mad. I wouldn't say the topic makes me mad as much as it makes me passionate. It's a passionate topic of mine. So you will hear it from us all the time. What he says right here is what we say all the time. Job descriptions start in one place and end up in another. Most of the time, job descriptions are copy and paste jobs. And I like how he puts here that he even found a job description that had a rejection letter pasted into it because it was literally a copy and paste job. So I'm going to put the link here in the chat box so that you can read it for yourself. But a couple of points that I want to highlight here about this. When we saw this, we realized we needed to do a live stream about this. We needed to put together a show about it. So here's one important part that a lot of people don't realize. Job descriptions are not written by the hiring manager alone. The job descriptions also include input from other departments. Most companies have unrelated departments determining how the job description is written.
Yep.
Nothing wrong with having input from finance or HR or anything like that. It's necessary. But that's it's gotten to a point to where job descriptions are being determined by finance and HR. And another thing that I want to point out here as well is this part. The amount of time it takes from when a hiring manager creates, quote unquote, a job description or a job posting to when that job posting is actually posted. Could be months. He says weeks here, but in months. It could be months. Now, that's just for when it gets posted. Now, what about by the time that hiring manager gets to interviewing people? How long has it been since then? Is that hiring manager going to remember what they wrote? Has that hiring manager's needs changed since they wrote that job description? Have they maybe lost employees to promotion or demotion or leaving for another company? Or have their projects changed? Have they taken on a new long-term project? There's so many reasons that the system is broken as it relates to job descriptions. And we titled the video "Job Descriptions Are a Joke." They are, but more appropriately, I think the way to describe it is that they're broken. The job description system is broken. And now that I've stopped sharing my screen, I can now, because I'm multitasking, I'm producing today and I'm on screen with you. So give me a second. Let me put this link to the post here. And this is from a retired vice president from Amazon. And it's not just him that says it. We've heard Mike say it. We hear our colleagues say it. We actually hear from hiring candidates that have heard it from frustrated hiring managers that say it. But so that's the starting point for our conversation today. Mike, what are your initial thoughts about the topic of job descriptions being broken? Because we've got our main talking points that we use all the time. And that the gentleman just outlined in that post are the same ones that we say all the time.
I want to talk about what this means. If accounting and finance are effectively writing your job description, it means the people that know least about the job are the ones that are writing the job description. Now, what problems is this going to cause? And I can tell you this is why it's so hard to hire in tech. And this is why we always talk about reconnaissance. So I'll say what I mean. So if you're trying to figure out customize your resume to some job description that has nothing to do with the job, what's ultimately going to happen? You're now going to have a resume that makes you get through the screening process, which is HR, which is they've gotten through a job description that fine, you have 10 Olympic gold medals, you've been given the Medal of Honor, you've got a PhD from here, all to get your interview for a front desk receptionist. But whatever, that's the job description. And you see all these things that are absolutely wacky, and then you prepare a resume on these wacky things, and then the hiring manager asks you something related to the job, and you have no idea. It used to be a long time ago, there were all these people that were going into networking, for example, and they were told they needed to learn Linux, and they were learning Linux, and this was like 20 years ago, and they were learning all these scripting languages, and all they were learning this, and I'd ask them on an interview, tell me how BGP works. Tell me about all the things that could go wrong on a slow application across the network, starting from the server itself, all the way through the network. And they didn't know. And the reason they didn't know was they were spreading themselves so thin, trying to learn this thing and 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 this thing. In the end, they were nothing more than a hobbyist in everything that they actually learned. Which is why if you heard Russ White yesterday say, we can never find anybody that's good at networking, it's not because there's not a lot of smart people. There's a lot of smart people. But some people think in order to get better at your job, you focus on your job and you master it. That's what I believe. Some people start looking at job description and they start learning a little bit of everybody else's job. In the end, they don't have enough to do anything. So it's really rough. I know Chris has got a lot of sources that he has, but an HR Director magazine, they talk about pressure to attract candidates, and they try to make a job description look so good because they think it's going to get someone special, right? But in the end, it gets a jack of all trades that can't do any job. And then the hiring manager can't hire them. So what do? They hire a recruiter and basically pay someone $40,000 to $50,000 to find someone that can actually do the job because HR can't. Now, you'll also find a lot of jobs with high turnover rates. Why do they have such high turnover rates? Because if I'm hiring someone to be an architect and I'm in a position where they're going to design, present, sell, lead, facilitate meetings, respond to RFIs, RFPs, and RFQ. But if that person really wanted to be a cloud engineer where they're going to be building it, they're going to go miserable. they're going to go miserable because it's not what they want to do. At the same time, a lot of people don't realize when they move into many of these architecture roles, there's a sales component. And they study for all these things other than the business skills. At the same time, we all have to do what makes us happy. So there's that. So I wanted you to get that concept. Hacker Earth also recently was talking about something funny. They were saying, we've noticed a lot of job descriptions that want more years experience than technologies that have even exist. And this is starting to feel kind of crazy. So when you start looking at this, and the other thing that will come up constantly, but I wanted to give you this source because it was the Entrepreneurs Project, which is actually supported by IBM. So you kind of know the source here. And they say that when employers put out unrealistic expectations, the employers actually miss the really good candidates who, despite the lack of all the required skills and required years of experience and required this, they're losing the best candidates, which is why we typically say, get a recruiter, go straight to the hiring manager, because you don't want HR that knows nothing about what you do, determining if you're the next person that should be there. It's kind of the equivalent of asking a TV actor what they think on macroeconomics, or a TV actor how to perform surgery. They just don't know. And that's why you need the people that are really creating the job. So I'll say one thing, never trust a job description. Never. Look and see what the people and the employers are doing. Check their LinkedIn profiles, check their resumes, ask questions. You'll get there. And of course, at some point today, I'll give you my secret for finding the actual job description. But I want to go back to Chris. He's got so much really good data to show today.
Yeah, so my problem now is I've got too many sources. I'm trying to figure out which one to go to. We got 10 pieces of content that we decided to use for this, and I prepped for the show, but now I don't know which direction I want to go. But so one of the things that I want to highlight is that out of all the sources, out of all the content that I was reviewing in preparation for this show, there were a couple of overarching themes. And again, this is not what Mike and I are saying. This is not what the gentleman that worked at Amazon is saying. This is what people have been saying for the past 2 years. And if you think it's been for the past 2 years, trust me, some of our sources are from 2006, 2013, 2014. So the one from 2006 is actually the headline of that one is why job descriptions are useless, August 16th, 2006. So, but it's not that job descriptions are useless. It's what they become is useless. So, but anyway, like a couple of the overarching themes as it relates to the job descriptions that are being pointed out as problems of the job description are the inclusion of too much stuff, too much unrelated stuff. And that's directly related to what Mike and I say and the gentleman said about copying and pasting. You'll get people copying and pasting, and the list just grows and grows and grows. But then at the same time, you have unrelated people facilitating the creation of job descriptions. Everybody's going to put in their wish list. HR is going to have their standard requirements of everything. I would venture to say that if a hiring manager writes a job description, HR may ask other people in that same department to review it to see if it's adequate. I've seen that happen before. And then guess what happens then? Then this other manager that's in the same department, it's like, well, you know what? It really needs this. Here's what I've found that I need. Well, that's what you need, not what this hiring manager needs.
Yeah.
And I've seen that happen quite a bit, where I've got two people that are the same level, and they're asked to review job postings before they go public, and it turns into a wish list of everybody's wish, not the person that's actually hiring wish. Go ahead.
And let's talk about that, because Chris did this. So let's say I want to hire a cloud architect, and I'm going to give you what's written in CIO magazine. but I want to hire a cloud architect. So I put down the things that I want. Usually I'm going to cut and paste it from somewhere else. Then somewhere along the line, there's going to be somewhere in my department that thinks everybody needed to be a great programmer before they could become an engineer, before they could become an architect. It's ridiculous. It's not related to the job, but somebody feels it. Now there's someone else that thinks everybody needs to have a CCIE because they're biased to like networking. And then there's somebody else that needs everybody. So the next thing you realize, this job description has 5 different careers. You know, it's rare in life that we actually have the executives telling us what we want. And CIO Magazine and Gartner actually did this. And here's what I want you to think about. I'll give you the cloud architect job description that management says, this is what I want. The actual people who hire architects. And I want you to think how different that is than how people train. And I want you to think about the skills that are related to do what's on this list. And then we're going to get back to Chris's data. And then I want to think about what people actually do. So when CIO Magazine published, and I'll drop this link in the chat box too, because, you know, I don't want you to think we're not giving you good sources. So when CIOs, the people who hire the architects, were said, what do you want? They were told 3 things for cloud architect functions. They said leading the cultural change for cloud adoption. What does this mean? This means going to stakeholders and getting stakeholder feedback and developing relationships and building marketing plans around cloud adoption and training people. So you're dealing with leadership skills. There are a lot of communication, a lot of presentations there. And then they say developing and coordinating a cloud architecture. What they're really talking about is building a team of individuals that can design an architecture where you're the lead. And let's say I'm the lead architect. I've got a network architect, a security architect, an AI architect, a data scientist, some DevOps engineers, and a whole bunch of other people to guide the tech. And then they say developing a cloud strategy and coordinating an adoption process. Now we're talking about migration strategy planning. We're talking about setting up governances. We're evaluating risks. We're performing impact analysis on risks. Now we're creation of statements of work. We're looking at the sophistication of the people. Can they manage it? What kind of people do we hire? That's the 3 responsibilities. You see CIOs saying this is what we want. And I can promise you, I can find you some ridiculous job description that is going to make it look anywhere like a cross between a network engineer, a software developer, an airplane pilot, and an Olympic gymnast. And to make it even further, okay, fine, they're high-level responsibilities. CIOs, what do you want? And they said finding talent with the necessary skills. That means interviewing people, assessing application software and hardware. Yeah, collecting information, asking questions, and bringing in engineers. Creating a cloud broker team. That was the whole team I was talking about. Establishing best practices for the cloud. Sure. For every situation here, you'll make it look like this, look like this. They say overseeing governance and mitigating risk. Yeah, that was me talking about going to stakeholders and communicating with them, managing budgets and estimated cost, and developing incident response procedures like if you're hacked or there's an earthquake, what do you do? Now, imagine you learned Python, or you learned SysOps, or you learned DevOps, or you spent all this time doing hands-on projects. You've been preparing for cloud engineering things, not architect, and you'll never get hired. So that's the impact of these bad job descriptions. And I just thought CIO Magazine posting that, here's what we want. And why did that article get written? Because there were a whole bunch of ridiculous job descriptions that were completely meaningless.
Yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to do is I've got an article here from Forbes. I'm going to put in the chat box. I'm not going to read the whole article, but I'm going to quote a part of the article here. So the subject of this article is 6 mistakes company make when hiring and what to do instead. So this was written for the employer. So where's there we go. This one's from Forbes. So one of the one that caught my attention that I want to read about is the creating vague job descriptions. So there's 2 ways that a job description can be vague. And that's too little information or too much irrelevant information. And so what we're seeing is too much irrelevant information, which creates a vague job description. I know that seems like an oxymoron. You got a lot of information, but it's vague. Well, if the information's not valuable and isn't relevant, then it's the description of the job is inherently vague. So here's what Forbes had to say. Anytime you don't clearly specify what the job duties and responsibilities are for a position, it can lead to misunderstandings, disappointed new hires, and unrealistic expectations for everyone involved. If you fail to accurately describe the duties of the position, you may be misleading candidates and costing your business time and money. You may also be attracting candidates who don't have the necessary skill sets to do the work in mind. At the very least, this will bog down the recruitment and hiring process because you'll have to weed out those who lack the skills. This can lengthen the amount of time that your current employees have to cover the workload, so on and so forth. Unrealistic expectations, costing the business time and money, attracting candidates who don't have the necessary skills, and bogging down the hiring process. All from a vague job description or irrelevant job description. Mike, would you agree with every single one of those?
100% of them. I mean, it's so bad. Now, it either lists so much stuff that by the time the person passes an ATS, which we advise not using an ATS and doing it in a much smarter way. But what happens, we either get that generalist who can't answer a single question we can't hire, or we're so general that in the end we don't get what we're looking for. Or another thing to think about is, imagine this. Let's say I was hiring people and I made a job description a long time ago, in the days of me and Russ White designing and building out the internet. And I had all this wacky stuff that wasn't interrelated, like Apple Talk, Novell, IPX, Data Link Switching Plus, CLNS, CLNP, and all these legacy protocols that we used to work with. Chances are that's going to stay on my job description, even though there's less than 500 of us in the world that would even know how to work with that stuff. And then, then the next person's going to add the things that were big a couple of years after that. Not going to remove it. By the time I'm done, most of my information is so outdated. For example, it may say college degree required, bachelor's degree or master's degree required. Meanwhile, the same employer could be Google that says no degrees required, or Microsoft that says we no longer require degrees for most positions, or any of these other things. And they're hiring people that have not gone to college. It's this irrelevant. It's this vague. It collects you a pile of everything that you can't do the job. And I used to talk to people that I'd interview 1,000 people. And out of 1,000 people, I didn't find a single person that could do the job. And then I would call IT Excel Christina Marino specifically because she was a great recruiter. And I'd call Christina and say, find me someone that can do this. These are the 5 things that I want in them. And Christina Marino would call me like 3 days later and say, I've got these 2 people for you to talk to. And one of them we could hire. And that's why companies get so frustrated. Hiring managers get so frustrated. They just skip the entire HR process and they use external recruiters. Because the internal recruiters are the people that are writing job descriptions that are looking whether they should reject someone based upon a job description that has nothing to do with the job. That's why I don't apply for jobs. That's why I go to recruiters for jobs. That's why I call people in my contact list for jobs or use referral. Because in the recruiting world, they used to call HR the Terminator. And they said HR will prevent any good candidate from getting hired. Just like Arnold Schwarzenegger and the Terminator. They're the Terminator. And why were they the Terminator? Because they had no idea what the employer wanted. They had no idea what the hiring manager needed. They had no idea in the job, but all of a sudden they're putting up all these roadblocks like 10 Olympic gold medals, 15 degrees, and knowledge of 45 other people's careers. Problem is, you can't learn 45 people's careers. And when somebody tries to it, they can't get hired. So that's the biggest issue I've seen. It is monstrous. And now it's getting worse. Now you're seeing the job gurus, please, I beg you don't do this, that are saying use ChatGPT to customize your resume for a job description. So now you just customize your resume for a job that doesn't really exist. And in the event you're lucky enough to get the interview, the hiring manager won't want you because you just prepared and showed them a resume for somebody else's job. This is how it impacts people. This is why it's so terrifying to me. And even IBM noted in that blog that they sponsored that so many of the time they're just old job descriptions which haven't changed to stand the test of time. The other thing that was interesting is that there was an HR and a recruiting executive on LinkedIn that I thought was interesting. His name was John Kleist III. And he really talked about, the biggest companies of the world pumping out rigid job descriptions that are loaded with buzzwords and meaningless credentials, completely missing the point, finding the right people. And this is why these things concern me. Because if you know what you're aiming for, you can hit your target. But if you don't know what you're aiming for, where are you going to go? You got to have a list. You got to know where you're starting from and where you're going. So I'll bring it back to Chris because he's got more of these great articles and samples, and we'll comment back on these articles from our experience over the last few decades.
So another thing that I'm sure many of you have seen that I'm just going to steal the words from this article, other than a laundry list of job requirements. I'm sure another thing that many of you have seen is contradictory traits or contradictory job requirements in the job description, contradictory skill sets. This is reflective of the writing process that goes into it. When you've got more than one person or more than one party involved in the job descriptions, especially if you've got HR involved in the process, you're going to find things like quality leader that works well, is a great team player. Really? Do we want the leader to be a great team player, or do we want the leader to be a great leader?
Exactly.
I mean, it sounds nice. It sounds good to be a great leader and work well and be a great team player and all of that. But do those go well together? I mean, yes, because if you're a leader, you're going to have to work well with other leaders in theory. Yes. But that shouldn't be a big part of the job description. That's just one example of contradiction. Or you're looking for a leader and someone that follows instructions well. I'm just saying, like, if you're looking for a leader, do you want someone that's following the instructions, or do you want somebody that's giving the instructions, giving the responsibilities, managing people? That one, when I read that one in this article, I was just like, oh wow, I've never even thought of that. When I see them, I just kind of go right past them because I'm like, that's just fluff. But that's me. I've got the experience. Unfortunately, I've been on the dark side of writing these, so I know. Okay, just read right past that. But that's me. That's not the job candidates. That's not the people that are using the job descriptions or the job postings as a guide or a roadmap. And so when they see these things, they see these contradictory things, you don't necessarily recognize them as contradictory immediately. And so I wanted to bring attention to that, to be on the, we're talking about how the job descriptions are broken. That's just another example of fluff being added into the job description. I would venture to guess that most hiring managers don't truly care if their leaders are great team players.
Not usually.
They care if their leaders know how to lead. And they care if their team players know how to play in a team.
Yeah.
They're not going to write something that directly contradicts itself. But once it gets past them into other people's hands that are involved in the writing process, that's when you start to see these things that don't make sense, let alone the things that don't make sense, like having experience with Kubernetes of 25 years or 35 years or whatever some of these job descriptions say out there. Some of these things are pretty crazy. But yeah. Another thing from that same article, and again, I'm going to put the link in the article, not the link in the article, the link to the job descriptions. I know it sounds like I'm repeating myself, but it's a separate article. I was talking about things that are trends across all the articles that I came across. Unnecessary qualifications, lack of clarity. Do you really need this? Do you really need that? Are you just putting down a bunch of stuff? What's the real job description look like? And I know that's what Mike and I will get to in a little bit, because the topic of the conversation is, how does this impact your career? At the end of the day, it's all about finding out what that true job description is. You know, we're inherently going to be talking about cloud architects, solutions architects, security architect. And so what does that real job description look like? How do you figure out what that real job description is? How do you figure out what those real requirements are? So let me put the link to this article in here. Again, it looks like it's just it looks like it's just rehashing the same stuff. Well, it is. This one's from November 14th of this year. Like, it's the same problem that's been around for years and years. So let me put this link in here. Mike, let me know if you want to do some of the questions before we keep going.
I do. I want to get first to Paul Johnson's questions.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions about ATSs. So I just
and we can get into some of them next as we continue to go. So Paul Johnson's question: do architecture interviews revolve around the job description? Not at all. We're talking about these irrelevant job descriptions. So let's say a job description has things that are unrelated to the job, like DevOps or Python or Linux or things like that. Here's what I'm going to ask an architect. First, I'm going to ask the architect what's on their resume. So if they've got all this stuff and their resume matches the job description, yes, they're going to get, to some degree, a lot of it that's going to look a lot like the job description, which is the biggest problem, because people put down that, for example, things they don't know. So yes, they passed the ATS, but I can't hire them anyway. And I also will never even interview them in the future because they lied to me with what's on their resume. So that's it, definitely. So we ask you things that are related. So for example, if someone's coming to me for a cloud architecture role, I'm going to ask some questions. If the whole point of an architect is to improve my client's business acumen, I might ask them, what are the major forces of business? And what do we need to align in order to get our clients to their strategic goals? I might ask someone in a cloud architect interview, could you explain to me why 80% of all cloud architectures provide zero business value, and what you can do to help your clients get a return on their investment? You know, Russ White gave an example the other day. He said, I have 2 hosts plugged into 2 routers. What has to occur for them to communicate to each other? Which again might be a basic networking question we would ask, but we need to know if that person has an understanding. If I'm interviewing an architect, I might say, talk about what goes into a demilitarized zone for an organization that has critical securities and needs to have 99.999% availability. That's an architecture question. And most people can't answer it. If I ask people to explain and compare and contrast block storage, object storage, file storage, how each one of these storage architectures work, where these are actually used, and the strengths and weaknesses and pros and cons of each one, I can't get an answer, but I need that from an architect. So when you use something that's got a long laundry list of a bunch of techie things, it doesn't matter to us because it's not what we're hiring for someone for. So that's really the key. But we will usually look at your resume, and here's what we're typically going to look for. And this is how I end the interviews quickly, and I can find people I can trust or not. There's usually something a candidate puts on the resume, typically at the top, something that they think I want to hear based upon a job description. And it's usually the thing that they know the least about. And when they write it on their resume, they write it in a way that proves they don't really understand what it was. For example, I saw someone recently say they improved their application performance with the ITIL framework. So I knew that wasn't an answer because a framework doesn't improve your application performance. I asked them, how did ITIL help you do improve your application performance? And maybe they were going to say, well, we used a various process to get the business needs, to get the technical needs, to get this need. Then I created an architecture team because that's what an architect would do. And what he said, you just implement it, it works. It's like a switch, you turn it on, which told me they didn't even know what an ITIL was. But that's what I get 99% of the time. So I kind of hope that actually helps. I also want to take a step back, and Chris and I are going to talk about the ATS for a second.
Oh, hold on. I want to chime in on the job description thing. So So yeah, so like Mike said, the way that this question is phrased, the job,
Oh, I didn't see the second half.
do what?
I didn't see the second half.
Oh, I haven't even gotten to the second half. I'm still in the first half. So the interviews do not revolve around the job description, except for, in my perspective, if you've got a job description that actually kind of like has an executive summary at the top of it. If it's going to revolve around any part of the job description, the interview will revolve around that part, because that top part, like if it's a Microsoft job description, those are my favorite. Like they've got a top part that's like a couple of paragraphs that explain the purpose of the job. It will revolve around that. It will not revolve around the stuff that I call below the fold. When you get into the requirements and the qualifications and the skills and the blah, 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 blah. It's not, none of that's used to filter people out. Unfortunately. Unfortunately, that's used to filter people out. Because I say unfortunately because the people that are doing the filtering don't realize that half of that stuff doesn't actually matter. So it doesn't revolve around the what I call the bottom half of the job description. It revolves around the what is the job, not what do you have. I hope that makes sense. And would you agree with that, Mike? If the job description includes the job or a description of the job, the interview would be based around that. But if that's not on there, it's not going to.
Yeah.
It's not based on requirements. It's not based on skills. It's not based on qualification list. It's not based on any of that. Your interview questions are not going to be based on that. It's going to be based on the job. So, and that's another part of the job description or job posting. So many people get bogged down in the requirements, skills, qualifications, knowledge, all that stuff. No, don't get bogged down in that, because we've already hashed out half of that's fluff and half of that's the other half that's remaining after the fluff is just a bunch of copy and paste stuff. So the second half of this, if so, okay, so we've already established that it is not so.
Yeah.
What is the best way to influence the interview to your favor, or let the interview take its course? Listen. Actually listen to the interview. Another thing, the interview starts well before the interview.
Yes.
The interview starts as soon as you put anything out there about yourself. If you got a LinkedIn profile, your interview's already started. Your interview started when you created your LinkedIn profile, or whenever you put the farthest thing on your LinkedIn profile. It started in 1983, if that was your first job. Your interview's already started. So the best way to influence the interview is to make sure that whatever you've put out there about yourself and whatever the employer can find about you and whatever the employer is able to use in the interview, you're able to take advantage of. If there's anything out there that you don't know, then you're not going to be able to influence anything.
Yeah.
So you have to know what you know going into the interview and make sure that there's not and our live stream from 2 Fridays ago was specifically about this, about what is your application, what is your resume, what does your LinkedIn profile have, because that's going to make up 90% of your interview.
Yeah. And the rest of it's going to come from the following question. I'm going to have Chris ask me a basic question, which starts out 90% of the interviews. And I'm going to answer it 3 different ways. And each way that I answer it is going to change the tone for the interview. In the first one, I'm going to give you an actual architect one. In the second one, I'm going to give you what I would get typically from a network engineer that thinks they're a network architect. And in the third one, I'm going to give Chris something that's so babbling and distracting, the interview's already over, and I took it. So why don't you, ask me the first, tell me about yourself.
Yeah, so Mike, thanks for coming in today. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely, Chris, and it's so nice to be here. I have about 25 to 26 years experience as an enterprise architect. In this time, I've worked with the largest banks, the largest internet service providers, and the largest healthcare systems in the world, including their governments. I've closed many billion-dollar plus architectures, and I've led many digital transformation projects in every industry with the Fortune 100 companies that you think of. I've got a lot of experience, about 20 years, training others and building up their leadership skills and their capabilities and helping them better help their organizations.
Okay, well let's go back to where did you start? Where did you start off in your career? Because you had a lot in there and it sounded great. So,
Chris, what ultimately happened? Okay, where did I start? Is that what your question is?
I don't remember where you started, but I was just indicating that I'm going to dig into what you just gave me. I'm gonna
and now I can go down. I can say I started in networking as a network architect, and I did that. But I planted that seed for Chris. Now I'm going to give Chris is going to ask me the same question, and now I'm expecting an architect response, and I'm going to give him an engineering one.
All right, Mike, thank you for coming in today. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
I'm an enterprise architect with about 25 years experience, and I've worked extensively with BGP, OSPF, IS-IS. I've also worked extensively with MPLS, TDP, LDP, RDP signaling, MPLS explicit paths, backup explicit paths, Martini tunnels, and BGP VPNs over MPLS.
Can you tell me how that's helped you in your role as an enterprise architect?
Well, yeah, because I know the network, and if the network doesn't work, nothing's going to work. So I have expertise on the network.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go to the next question. Yeah.
And now I'm going to answer it a third way. This is where I'm going to get attacked, and this is where it's going to crush me that I'm incompetent. And Chris,
that one didn't do. Okay.
No, that one I gave you an engineering thing, but the first thing you would do is that,
good. Yeah, because my initial thought was maybe we should interview for another role. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's
exactly what would happen.
Yeah.
But you might, if Chris had the capability, he would start giving me engineering questions. I might say I have a network engineering role on my team. But I automatically
I halfway thought about asking if we should interview you as an engineer, but I wasn't sure. I thought that was the kill the interview response. Okay.
That was get another job in the company if I'm lucky this day.
Okay. Right,
I'll give you the ridiculousness of what I've got, and this is what we normally hear. And then I want you to think the way we normally hear how it's going to impact Chris and his perspective of my communication skills, my ability to explain my thoughts, and my ability to know things. So Chris, ask me the third time.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for coming in today, Mike. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Okay, well, Chris, I'm partially Greek, and I speak Greek at home, and that's very, very important to me. I also really love the ocean and the water, especially the sand, which is why I live in Florida these days. I'm from New Jersey, by the way. I have to tell you, I spent a lot of years as a firefighter paramedic, and then when I was done working in that world, I worked as a nurse, and then I became a nurse practitioner, had my own internal medicine office. And then after that, I really wasn't sure what I was going to do. So then I went into networking, became a network architect, did that for a couple of years, played with some Linux along the way, played with some firewalls along the way. Then I kind of got bored, took a couple more years off. Then I worked as a cloud architect. Then I took a couple of years off. Then I did some enterprise architecture.
So you got bored and became a cloud architect?
Well, yeah, networking, I did it. I learned everything I could, and I wanted to learn some more. And what else was good? I kept hearing the cloud was good in the newspaper, kept hearing it was big and exciting. The Cisco CEO told a lot of people that they should learn cloud. So, I learned the cloud.
Okay. So what did you do as a cloud architect?
I talked to people. I implemented some processes. I did a little bit of hands-on configuration. I did a lot of troubleshooting. Definitely was doing a lot of troubleshooting when things broke. And, sometimes I actually wrote the code myself.
So all right. Okay. All right. So do you have any last questions for me?
Yeah. What's the pay here and what's the work-life balance? Now,
yeah.
Do I look focused? Do I look like I love the cloud? He's got to hire someone because I love it so much. I might look smart. or I might look like a crazy person, more likely like a crazy person, but it's not going to drive Chris in the matter that's going to ask me the questions that I like. So that's going to give you some guidance in addition to your resume, in addition to how you reach the company. Ideally, you didn't just apply for it. You had a recruiter pre-sell you that knew what the hiring manager wants, and you know how to pre-sell yourself. There's a science to doing this. There's a psychology. There's an observation. There's a lot of it.
So let's move to where's the first? Okay, so Jose, we got a couple of them, so I'm just gonna put them up. How do you get past the ATS system with these job descriptions to get in front of the hiring manager? And then Paul asked, most resumes are now being customized to pass ATS systems. Okay, so
we can talk a lot about that.
Yeah,
so,
we can talk a lot about that. Before we get to our bit about not doing the ATS system.
Yes.
Let's talk about the ATS system.
So we've got employers that have software that's going to scan for certain things, kind of like search engine optimization. And ultimately, they're going to prioritize those resumes to a human. In most cases, a human still looks at the resume anyway, because the systems are not that good. So it's still going to go to a human. You can see them, those HR humans in there. They're going to get something from the ATS system. It might even have a score of some kind. And they're going like rejected, 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 rejected. But it's still generally the person. And it's still always related to that. So the key is, you can't make yourself based upon a job description. You can't be based upon an ATS system. You have to be there. I will tell you that I get ATS pass resumes. I have yet in my entire life, in 25 years, been able to hire someone straight from HR. Because 100% of the people they sent me were incapable. The only time I hired somebody from HR was my first person in HR. And when I interviewed him, I hired him because this guy was great. He had the best personality and the best attitude. And I went to my manager, the vendor, and said, I think we should hire him. And my manager said, does he have the skills? And I said, no. Does he have any experience? I said, no. Does he have any capabilities? I said, no, but he's smart. And my manager said, fine, it's on you if he doesn't make it. And he was awesome. And I taught him and he got there. But realistically, what I'm thinking, the ATS is not the problem. You find recruiters that you go to. You call recruiters on the phone. You create the content and you make employers come to you. I don't know why anybody is applying for jobs in today's modern world. I applied for jobs in the beginning. I realized it wasn't going to get me anywhere. And then I found a set of recruiters. So which do you think would be better for you? Find a recruiter that's going to get paid $40,000 or $50,000 to find you a job, maybe 60 or 70. And they're going to get a commission. So they're going to go through their contact list. They're going to talk to you. They're going to ask you questions about you. They're going to connect you with managers that they think are going to like you. And they're going to even pre-sell you to the manager. And they'll even help negotiate your salary. So do you have a professional that's paid $50,000+ by the employer to find them somebody good because they couldn't hire from their HR? And then you go straight to the hiring manager. Or you customize a resume for an ATS, pass the ATS, go to the hiring manager and never get hired because they feel you lied on your interview because you customized your resume to the ATS. I write a blog, I get a job offer. I create a video, I create a job offer. I had to take Cloud Architect off of my resume because it was too hard and I just didn't want to each day say no thank you, no thank you, no thank you. So that's really the key we're coming from. Train for the job, be prepared for the job, and customize your resume for the actual job yourself. Show what you can do. Show which are the real skills the employers need that you ultimately have. And then find somebody that can teach you how to create the right content to get employers to come to you and how you should approach it. So don't worry so much about the ATS system.
Yeah, so continuing with the discussion about the ATS system. So the ATS system is part of the process that's broken. And that's why we utilize recruiters. That's why companies even use internal recruiters and third-party recruiters to fill the same role. That's why companies will spend $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 to fill a role. The average, so before I keep going about the ATS, so the average cost, we got these numbers here. The average cost of a bad hire bad hire is about $50,000 when we're talking about an architect role. That's the cost to hire, and that's the cost to figure out that they're a bad hire.
Yep.
That does not include the cost for the next round.
Nope.
That's just the one. So let's assume that they make a bad hire and then make a good hire. They got 50,000 on the bad hire, and let's say 25, 30,000 on the good hire to pay the recruiter. And then they don't have the bad hire part of that. So we're talking 75, 80,000 if you go through 2 people for one role. And that'll take a year. Companies have no problem paying a recruiter 40 grand.
None.
To fill a role.
None.
Because their confidence level in that hire is so high. Now, back to the applicant tracking system. And the question that we get all the time, how do I make blah, 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 match the applicant tracking system? So it feels like that question comes from a place of, I don't have the skills. So the first question should be, do I have the skills for the job? Now, I think Mike and I should probably pivot here soon to how do you figure out what's required for the actual job here soon. But your resume, your LinkedIn profile, your application, whatever it may be, should fit the job.
Yes.
Not the job description. And I know it seems counterintuitive because the applicant tracking system dictates what applications get through the system by nature. Like, that's the point of it. And the ATS determines what applications get to that human that Mike was talking about because of these arbitrary metrics that are put in. So let's assume you get through the applicant tracking system. Does that human recognize the difference between this arbitrary information that they've been given and what the hiring manager that's 1,000 miles away from them, that they've never seen before, that they've never talked to except in an email thread once every 6 or 7 months when they've got a job? Are they going to be able to figure out if you're qualified for the role or not? Are they going to go by this arbitrary information that's on the job description that may or may not be accurate? There's so much wrong with the applicant tracking system model.
Yeah.
And again, this is coming from an HR guy. There's so much wrong with the applicant tracking system model. It's not the only way to get a job. No. That's why we keep talking about recruiters. Yeah. Guess what? You don't pay for a recruiter.
No.
Why won't you use something that's free? Use something that's free. Use it. It's free. Their job is to get you a job.
The companies are paying for them so they don't have to deal with their own HR because they want somebody good. So if you hire an executive, they don't go through HR. They go through like a Korn Ferry International or a big recruiter. A lot of the best jobs do. So there's that. Plus, I want to go back to something Chris said. So let's say I wanted to search engine optimize a page for Cloud Architect because ATS systems and search optimization is the same. What if I made this page that said Cloud Architect, Cloud Architect, Cloud Architect, Cloud Architect? It's the best job, so become a Cloud Architect. Cloud Architects develop architecture framework. Cloud Architects do technology development. You need to be a Cloud Architect, Cloud Architect, Cloud Architect. Cloud Architects identify areas for improvement. Would you read that? What would you, yeah, it might rank to the top of Google if it was just based on SEO keywords, but everybody would say unsubscribe, unsubscribe, never go to this website again. Oh, of course, now Google's AI would punish you, but that's what we're talking about. So if you know what you actually do, you can still hit the ATS while doing things good. So for example, enterprise architects things we do, cloud architects things we do. So I might put develop and maintain enterprise architecture frameworks. And I might say, utilize the TOGAF framework, the Zachman framework, the Gartner framework, and various enterprise architectures. Why is that? Because I'm showing that what I did, and I'm actually getting the keywords in the context of reality. We might talk about performing impact analysis of various technology platforms. And again, so what you want to do is you have to have something in your resume that speaks to the job, that shows the hiring manager you're the right person. And if you're going to try to apply, you got to also hit the ATS at the same time. But I warn you, almost everybody that I've ever seen, actually everybody that I've ever seen that tried to game the ATS never made it through the interview. So why bother trying to game a system only to get there and get shot down and then have the company put a big X next to your name that says don't hire in the future?
Yeah. I could probably do an entire show about applicant tracking system. And actually, there's something so inherent in Paul's comment here that we addressed it. But most resumes are now being customized to pass the ATS system. So if you don't do that, if that's your premise, that's what most resumes are doing, and you don't do it, and you go the recruiter route, who has better opportunities?
Mm-hmm.
The most of the people that tailored it to something that doesn't hold its value, or the person that went towards a customized, personalized, and nuanced approach with a recruiter? The person that's got the customized, personalized, nuanced approach with the recruiter. Let's see. Oh, here we go. So I'm going to start this one off. How do you recommend addressing the gap between having some cloud certifications but not meeting the X years of experience requirement that's often listed? Should we still apply? Absolutely. Before I answer, I want to point out that literally on this, while we've been on here, I just decided to go Google job descriptions on LinkedIn, and I came across a Microsoft Cloud Architect job description, and their years of experience were in the preferred.
Yes.
Required. So you're going to find that quality, well-written job descriptions are going to have it in the proper place if they have it. Now, let's talk about the experience. Actually, certifications and experience, they both serve the same purpose in the grand scheme of things. The purpose of certifications are to measure your ability to do or be knowledgeable on XYZ or ABC or whatever it might be. Does it mean that you understand it completely? No. It means that you've met the minimum requirement to show your competency, at least for the time span of the test, in this particular thing. So it's used as a not completely arbitrary, but it's used as an arbitrary metric to gauge your competency. Experience, on the other hand, is a completely arbitrary metric. Just the assumption is so-and-so's got 5 years of experience. That equals 5 years of expert level competency, because it takes 5 years to be an expert at something. Or 10 years, and they've got the commensurate, what I assume to be the competency that someone in that role for 10 years should have. Well, what if Mike assumes that they should have a different level of competency after 10 years? What if Alonzo assumes that they should have a different level of competency than both me and Mike over the course of 10 years? What's to determine that level of competency? But that's the purpose of experience on a job description or a job posting. Is simply to help guide a measurement of potential competency. Because when we're looking at paper, a resume or a LinkedIn profile, when we're just looking at words, there's no way for us to gauge competency. It's just it's not possible to gauge it looking at a at a formulaic thing like a resume or a LinkedIn. So it became a default that people used, that hiring managers would use, that HR mostly would use. And then hiring managers said, all right, I'm getting a bunch of crap, so I need to put some arbitrary thing on here and hope that it makes it better.
Yeah.
That's what experience is. And to a lesser degree, certifications, because certifications do, if they're good, if they're quality certifications, you gain some competency. But at the end of the day, it's really just saying, hey, I've got this minimum level of understanding about whatever the certificate is in.
Yeah. And I think there's the bigger question, Sapsulan, is the difference between the skills needed to get the job and the certification. No one really cares about years of experience. They care. For example, if you give me someone that has 13 AWS certifications and that's all they have, I can't hire them for any position, and I wouldn't, because they're not going to understand cloud computing. They're not going to understand architecture. If I'm hiring an architect, they're not going to understand the underlying network. And what I mean by this is I interviewed 1,000 AWS certified people, and I gave them very basic questions. And I gave them questions that I would ask any cloud architect. Your cost of capital is this. How would you leverage that information to determine whether you should build a private cloud versus a public cloud? I was looking for the business. I didn't get it. I would ask people, you've got an applications that are separated by 2,000 miles, and they're both hosted in 2 availability zones in the cloud. What could be the weaknesses and constraint points that could cause slow application performance? And now I need people to think of the storage. I need them to think of the CPU in their virtual machine. I need them to think about their wide area network. I need to think about networking constraints. I need to think about potentially rate limiting along the way for a certain kind of traffic. I need to think the big picture, but they're not going to get that in a certification. If I ask someone how to design a demilitarized zone and they've passed an AWS Advanced Security, they might not even know what a demilitarized zone was, and they sure wouldn't know how to design it. So I think we need the determination between the job you want, and then you need the skills you get. And then once you get on an interview, as soon as somebody interviews you, they're automatically willing to hire you. So we don't have to worry about the years of experience. Jennifer got hired by JP Chase in her last job as a mental health tech, and she got hired in her first tech job ever as a solutions architect. Jermaine got hired at SNMU as an enterprise architect, and his last job was selling landscaping gear. I mean, Jordan Kitko went to AWS after being a college student. His first job was a solutions architect. We trained him. Delroy Batt, you can see a video of one on our YouTube channel, got hired at CDW as a cloud security architect, and his last job was on ambulances. I mean, we're talking about, for example, Daniel Boser. There's a video of him on our YouTube channel. Really neat kid. Hired at 20 years old, didn't even graduate high school, and he never had a tech job before. Yvonne Tamba, another kid, college student, really smart, great guy, working as a waiter, hired by AWS. Jeffrey, the geologist, hired by Kalient, which is an example. Noah P. was a social worker who got his first job. Vladimir was a 24-year-old who got hired at North Highland as an architect. Al was a sales rep who got hired at, Deloitte as a senior solutions architect. Wallace Agana, you can see a video of him, so I'm mentioning his last name. He got hired by JP Chase. He had skills. He had trained for the skills. No one cares about your experience. They care about your skills. So if you tell us what job you want, when we go over various job descriptions, we can tell you the skills that are needed. But I'm going to tell you right now, 90% of them are not going to be covered in these certifications. So you get the skills, which are going to be unique to your job. And then you get the certifications, which are going to make you look more attractive. Then you'll get any job you want. But most certifications don't create real competency. There are some like the CCIE or the CCDE or the CISSP, but the majority of certifications are more about the name of something and how to configure it. And what's more important, Sapsulan, is knowing which one of the things in the certification you can't use. For example, if I've got someone that whether they have experience or they know not to use DynamoDB, Amazon Aurora, ECS, EKS, why they wouldn't use a WAF or any of these other things. What are the alternatives and why might they be better? That's what I need. I need someone with the expertise to know what's not in the certification, which is 90% of the job. But you can easily learn that on your own or be trained. You just need to know what it is for your skill.
Right. So before we talk about what we've touched a little bit throughout the discussion, but before we get to talking specifically about the impact that job descriptions can have on your career, I'd like you to talk about how to find the the real job description, regardless of the role, whether it's a cloud architect, a cloud engineer, a network engineer, a DevOps? How do you find out what's actually what's actually part of the job?
Okay. I'm gonna give you 3 separate stages. Let's say you're actually on the interview and the employer says, do you have any questions? This is the question you ask. Could you tell me, Mr. Manager, what are your goals and the company's goals? Because I would like to know that if I was part of your team, I could really help you meet or exceed those goals. Now, you're asking that question for a reason. First, you're showing the hiring manager you're a team player, you're willing to go above and beyond, and you're a solution. But at that point, you're going to get the actual job description. My goals are this, this, and this. Guess what? That's your job. So if you've already made it to the interview phase, that's how I get the job description. Now, generally speaking, I'm not a person that's a fan of applying for jobs. I typically work with executive recruiters because I could sit there and fill out applications all day, or I could have somebody just call the hiring manager and say, I want you to meet Mike. So that's what I do. And at that point, the recruiter might even say, Mike, I'll make these modifications to your resume. The person's going to want to see it. I know he cares about that. Now the recruiter is going to prep me for what that hiring manager needs to care about. And if the job description the recruiter gives me looks bogus, which in many cases it was, I'll ask the recruiter, could you find out what they really want? Because this job description doesn't seem like the actual job. And they'll ask. So that I would typically do that. At the same time, here's some other things that I would probably do at the same time. Let's say I wanted to be a cloud solutions architect at Microsoft. And now Microsoft's job descriptions are better than most of them that we find out there. They're much better. Microsoft's got their act together when it comes to technology in so many ways and hiring and being efficient. But let's say I don't, and I've got a wacky job description, but let's say it was a solutions architect at Azure. I would go to people's LinkedIn profiles with those title solutions architect and try to figure out what they're doing. And all at Microsoft. And what I would do is I'd take notes, and I would actually try to throw out the statistical anomalies and add the rest and say, that's your job description. What I would also do is I would also, if possible, ask a principal architect or a distinguished architect or an architect or manager at that company, what do people do if you have that opportunity? And by asking the people that have made it, the distinguished architects, the principal architects, the people that do the hiring, now you know exactly what they want. And these are the skills not only to get hired, but these are the skills that actually get promoted. And that's what I want you to have, the skills that are going to get you promoted too. So that's typically how I do these types of things. I actually go out there and I actually ask various people that are in the roles. I go to social media and I see what the people are doing, and that's how I get the real job description, because you're not going to get it from a job description.
Yeah, I think that's critical. Because a lot of the people that are watching us, they're trying to get to a particular role or a particular job or a particular career. So I think it's important that, and we've talked about this before in the past couple of weeks, that reach out to people that are in those roles that you desire. Actually, we might have talked about this in one of our classes. Never mind. But so I'm going to approach this from a different perspective now that I realize we talked about it in a class. So reach out to the people that are in those roles. If you want to become a cloud architect, then find people that are out there. LinkedIn is an amazing tool. Find people that are out there and reach out to them that have been a cloud architect or a security architect or an architect or whatever the title might be, for several years. Especially those that might have a progression upward in their career trajectory, and reach out to them and just send a message saying, hey, I'm new. I'm looking to prepare myself for an architect role. Can you tell me what it is that you do? What are the requirements for your job? What skill sets do you have? What skills do you use? What knowledge do you have? And reach out to enough people that you get a wide enough sample. And like Mike said, throw out the anomalies, keep the consensus, because you're gonna reach out and you're gonna have people that respond with very specific stuff specific to their role, and then you're gonna have some people that respond with generic stuff and a little bit of specific stuff, and you're gonna have people that respond with just generic stuff. And find the overlap. If you can find an overlap of like 50% consensus, that's the areas that you need to focus on to start off with. And the reason I'm talking about this, and the reason I asked Mike to talk about it, was because so many people use job descriptions and job postings to determine how they prepare for a career that they desire. And that's the second part of this topic of this title: why cloud job descriptions are a joke and its impact on your career. The job descriptions being a joke impact your career if you use the job descriptions that are a joke as a roadmap to determine what you learn for your career. That was a big circle of mush right there. That was like Sally sells, she sells by the seashore type of thing. But if you're using job descriptions that aren't of value to determine what you learn in your career development, it will impact your career in a negative way, because you will be unprepared for the actual role that you desire, whether it be a cloud architect or an engineer or anything in between. So that's the, like I said, that's the second part of this show topic, how it impacts your career. I can't tell you how many people that we've seen that it literally wasted thousands of dollars in years because they went down the wrong path because of bad information. And that's the whole reason why we do all these live streams, is to try and get accurate information out there. Now, can I go out there and tell you how to become a sysadmin or a DevOps? No, but I can definitely tell you how you should go about finding that out. And that's not by looking at a job description. That's by talking to people that are actually in the role and that have been in the roles and have succeeded in the roles. Again, whether it be a sysadmin, a network engineer, an enterprise architect, anywhere in between. You know, I'm going to throw Angelo under the bus here. If you want to be an application architect or an enterprise architect, reach out to Angelo in the chat box there if he's still there. But there's so many people, and a lot of people are scared to do that. And there's no reason to be scared. There are people that have been successful in their career. They desire to help other people.
Yes.
But we can't just like randomly pick, hey, I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you. No. We need people to show interest in us. And then we say, hi, we'll help you. Yes. You asked us for help. I'll help you.
Yeah.
You asked how I got to where I'm at. Perfect. Let me get a cup of coffee with you if we're in person, or let me do a LinkedIn message exchange with you. Let me get on a virtual call with you. I don't mean me specifically, but like, just there's millions of people out there that have been successful in their careers.
Yep.
Just waiting for people to pick their brain. So I wanted to let Mike talk about that and me talk about that for a minute, because there's so much bad information out there, whether it be the job descriptions or it be the people that have never done the job that are telling people how to get the job. It's important to get the right information.
It really is. And early in my career, I did something that actually changed my life. And I encourage others to do the same. When I got my first networking role, I was there for 3 days, and I said to my manager, which kind of freaked him out, could I meet the VP of architecture? And my manager says, why do you want to speak to a VP? You just got here yesterday. And I said, I know it sounds like a strange request, but I want to be the best long-term employee for WorldCom I possibly can. And I desired at some point to move into one of these principal architect roles. So can I ask what the perfect person is so I get a stack of things that I should be great at? And my manager said, you know what? Let me place a call. The VP actually welcomed me in his office. He had food catered in. He was so excited. He was like, Mike, this is the first person that's ever asked me this question. I've been waiting to share this forever. Now, Dan gave me all this information that I needed. I took copious notes in my leather folio with my pen and its time. And I got home and I learned what he told me. About a year and a half after that, I had my first principal solutions architect job where they wanted about 15 years of experience, and I had a year and a half. I was advising people with 20 years of background on how to do things, and I only had a year and a half. I would speak in every conferences in every country in the world with a year and a half experience, because that one VP said, Mike, these are the things that I need you to learn in the next 5 or 6 years. And I just decided to stay up all night and do it. And the point is, anybody can learn these things. Anybody can do whatever they want if they put their mind to it. But if you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there. And I'll tell you in the beginning, here's what everybody told me. Oh, you need an MCSE, Mike. You need to learn this Red Hat Linux thing when it's coming out. You need to know this thing. And I never learned any of it because the VP said, not where you're going, the skills of somebody else's job. Focus on this, this, and this. And I did. So that's how important getting the right information is, and how you can do the same.
All right. So I want to encourage anybody, if you've got any questions on the topic about job descriptions or interviews or resumes or LinkedIn or anything of that nature, let us know in the chat box. We are more than happy to answer any of your questions. So Mike, is there any other points that you'd like to make sure that we cover as it relates to the job descriptions? I could keep beating the dead horse about how bad they are, but I want to make sure that we cover anything that you got.
Yes, if I think of what I consider to be a good resume versus a bad resume, on a good interview versus a bad interview, I don't expect everybody to know anything. I don't.
Rephrase. You said everybody to know anything?
No, I don't expect anyone to know everything.
There we go.
I never do, and no employer does. I care just about as much about what you know and what you don't know. And if I know who the players on my team are, and I know who can do what, I don't need you to know everything. Alonzo and me, let me tell you, we're creative as can be. We're like Energizer bunnies coming up with ideas. But operationally, logistically, Alonzo and I could be the biggest chaos you could possibly imagine. But Chris on our team knows how to keep us organized. So together, it's a good combination. But he tries anyway, and he does a pretty good job of that. But the point is if I've got someone that's a really good application architect, and you don't know anything about applications, but you know a whole lot about security, and that's the big gap I might need, that's great. If you knew about applications, great. If not, if you know about security, great. I've got an applications person. Now, if you know networking, great. But if not, if I've got a networking person on my team, I'm still good. And maybe at some point you all teach each other, cross-train each other, and get a little better in case one of you are sick or out for a week or something. But I don't need every skill. I need expertise in the skills that are there. I need fundamentals. If you heard Russ White say yesterday that the tech hasn't changed, it's all a new version of the same old thing, which you've heard me say, if your fundamentals are good, you can do it. So I need you to focus on mastering the skills of your job, just your job. I don't care about anybody else's job because you're not going to be doing that. And that's the biggest career mistake I actually see. It's not the number of skills you have. It's what you can do with those skills. It's what you can do with that tool. And that's really what we're trying to talk about. We are here, at least as architects, to optimize our client's business. If you're a good leader and you're not as good on the tech side, but you're a great enterprise architect with good leadership skills and you've got the right tech skill people working for you, you're fine. That's your job anyway. You're not supposed to be the super technical person. But if you're an enterprise architect and you don't know business, well, now you're not fine because now you can't improve people, processes, and technology or optimize business. So think about the main skills. If you're curious on the kind of skills, things we do as a cloud architect or an enterprise architect, I'm happy to read off some of the skills we've done. I've compiled a list of most of the things we do so you can think about it and then you can understand. And we can even talk about those skills if you want. But is there a question that anyone has for us?
No questions yet. I'm thinking people are ready for the weekend, it seems like.
Could be.
Yeah.
It's a Friday. It's Christmas holidays. I went to donate blood this morning, and I tried to get through the parking lot of the Sam's Club where the big red bus was, and it was just, I couldn't even drive through it. I was like, okay, I guess I'm not donating blood till after New Year's, right? Because I try to go every 8 weeks or so.
So Roger's got a question, and I'm going to start off the answer with my favorite answer. How far back should one go in terms of job experiences if they aren't directly related? It depends, and I'll let Mike clarify.
Yeah. So it depends at what is related and what's not related, and in some cases they can be related. So
it also depends on who determines if it's related or not.
Yes,
that's important.
Yeah. So Raja, I have about 3 resumes that go around right now. I have an enterprise architect resume that highlights the enterprise architecture things that I've done. And I'll tell you on that one, I go back to 2002 when I was a principal architect, and I don't go anything further back. I also have a healthcare architect one. And what's different about my healthcare architect one is it shows the paramedic stuff that I was doing in 1993 to a certain thing. It shows the time that I was a nurse, and it shows the time I was practicing internal medicine. Now, why is that on my healthcare architect resume? Because that shows that I have a lot of experience in the healthcare industry. I understand how the healthcare industry operates. I understand the healthcare industry's pain points, and that makes me much more valuable to an organization to be able to design systems that optimize healthcare. But that's why I go back to like 1993 on that resume. But on the other ones, I would start at 2002. So if it's ancillary or tangentially related, I would still put it there. But I would also show the benefits of what you did in your earlier jobs too. And what I mean by this is every job had certain lessons to learn. And I'm not going to put whether I was a resident assistant in college unless it's my first tech job. But there are certain things that maybe you got a job at a certain point in time that you actually learned something. When you started learning things that could be applicable to your business, I would take those lessons. If it was management, yeah, always put them. If it's a leadership role, yeah, always put them. But if it's completely unrelated, like initially when I started tech, I actually hid the fact that I was a medical professional on most of them. I just didn't tell anybody. I stripped off. I didn't tell anybody what my MS was in because they didn't need to know. They never asked. It wasn't on. So I just put, I didn't put my MS, even though it was in a healthcare thing. I got my initial criteria and I learned real good by taking a ridiculous amount of training and spending a fortune on it and staying all night and reading, crazy amounts for a period of time. But it depends. So what's your resume look like, Raja? And what were the jobs that weren't directly related? And what were the lessons you can pull out of them? Were they leadership? Were they business? Were they sales? And then it becomes instantly related again for architecture roles.
All right. Well, doesn't seem like we've got very many questions today.
That's not.
No. If that's the case, I might start my holidays a little early, Mike.
Yeah, I'm good for that too. It's been a long week for some of us. Me and Chris and a few others have been going through all kinds of triple duty things in the last month, which we're always happy to do. So, oh wait, Jonathan's got a question.
I love this. Now they're just coming in with the. How are you doing, guys? Doing pretty good. Jonathan says he's going to send his resume. All right. If I get a resume sent to me somewhere, maybe we'll throw it up. Well, let's see.
Yeah.
B2D point. How do you view the job trend in 2025? Oh, after this week, that's very confusing.
Yeah. So
thank you, Treasury.
The inflation data this week was not good, which means the Fed can cut interest rates, and we already feel like we're in a relatively terrible economy right now. So it looks like we're in a pretty bad shape, and the Fed can't do anything about it. So
they say contradictory things.
Yeah, and they're saying contradictory things. This
week was like a job description.
Yeah, so it was. So here's what I would say, B2D.1. So I can tell you this week, a woman in the Middle East who had taken our training just told me she got hired yesterday, and she was so excited and grateful. I can tell you that someone in England just got hired, and I can tell you someone in Dallas, I'm pretty sure just got hired, and there's another one that just got hired of our training people, all in about the last 5-6 days. So there are still people getting hired. But I think
did you count the young lady that did the interview training? She didn't do the development program.
Yeah, that was the
Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure.
But no, it's good. That was the person in the Middle East.
Oh, okay.
And
sorry, it's hard to keep track of them. Actually, hey,
it's hard,
a good indicator right there, I guess.
Yeah, it actually can be. But so there's that. But here's what I want you to think about B2.1. There's going to be a lot of opportunity, but I need everybody to understand this. About a year and a half ago, we stopped selling our cloud engineering, maybe 2 years, and I stopped selling it because I knew AI was going to negatively impact engineers while it would create new jobs for architects, because AI in many things means new opportunities to create better business situations. We now see Google writing 25% of its code with AI. I agree with the NVIDIA programmer who says 5-10 years from now, we won't need software developers. All you'll have to do is talk to your computer. And I also really, if you saw what the Microsoft CEO just said, he said that SaaS applications, software as a service, are all on their way to being dead. And the reason why they're being dead is the company is just going to ask its AI, create this custom application for me, and it's going to be done. So if you'll notice what we talked about many years ago, we wrote articles in Forbes. We wrote articles in every economics magazine. We even did a live stream. If my team were there, they can show you. It's on our YouTube channel, where we said, get out of engineering. So the good news is well, for architects, the bad news for business is that 70 to 80% of all cloud architectures have been disasters. They went to the cloud. It cost 2 to 3 times more. It didn't work as well. They got hacked more. And it wasn't because the cloud wasn't good. It's because they didn't have people that had any real skill to actually do it. We're also dealing with a world with critical gaps in cloud skills, critical gaps in AI skills. Everybody will tell you they know AI, but they don't know any AI. They just know how to write a little code. They don't know AI. So huge gaps in AI. Enterprise architecture, massive gaps trying to help businesses get to their goals. Cybersecurity is so bad with 4.7 million job vacancies that the World Economic Forum actually is meeting to determine how they can keep the global economy alive with all the risks that actually exist out there. So if you really see that, what is it showing you? It's showing you that in challenging economic times, we still need salespeople because they bring in revenue. In challenging economic times, we still need architects because they bring in revenue. They're all people, human to human, person to person relationships, so they can't be replaced. I would tell you, get out of any kind of engineering, get out of software development unless you're the best of the best, like a distinguished architect or a distinguished engineer or a principal engineer in these worlds, because you're still going to be needed. But my predictions are that people should get out of anything that could be automated and move into roles that are customer facing. And that's why IBM, when they did a lot of layoffs, they said, look, AI is replacing these people, but we can't lay off customer-facing roles. Again, salespeople, business development people, architects, program managers, anytime you're in front of the organization. And I actually think we're going to see organizations start to invest, but I think organizations have to get rid of some dead engineering talent yet, meaning the engineers that are there that are not necessarily contributing to things. And the example I'll give you is Twitter. And I'm not going to say positive, negative about the owner of Twitter. I'm not going to go there. Twitter used to have a lot more people then. In fact, Twitter lost 80% of its employees, and Twitter is running just as good as before. In fact, the only difference is Twitter was losing money before, and now it's profitable. So if you think about that, understand that we need great people, really great people, but the people that aren't adding value, they're probably still going to be removed a little bit. Doesn't mean companies are not hiring for really good people right now.
All right. So Data Wrangler says, how do you identify good recruiters to work with? I'm going to put a video in the chat box for you. Also, doesn't working with the recruiter impact salary options since the company now has to pay the recruiter as well? Absolutely not. They're going to pay recruiters for the roles that they are going to pay a lot of money for. So
yeah,
it's in their budget. Trust me.
And generally speaking, you'll earn more money with the recruiter than without the recruiter because they're going to do the negotiation for you. And a good recruiter like ITXO and Christina Marino has professional negotiators working for them. So you'll usually earn more. The $50,000 for an hiring manager not to have to waste his time with HR and waste months trying to interview people that met a specific job description that has nothing related to the job. That's why they pay the recruiter, because they want people that can do the job. No, you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, it goes back to the, you may not have been here when I talked about the cost of a bad hire. It's baked into the cake. So it's either I'm going to pay for a bad hire or I'm going to pay a recruiter to save me from paying for a bad hire. So that recruiter is going to be, the recruiter that finds them a good hire is going to be half the cost of a bad hire. So
yeah.
that's the thing. So let me put this link in here. How to find a good recruiter. And this is a discussion between Mike and Christina Marino, who is a great recruiter.
Wonderful recruiter.
Let's see, there we go. All right, so how would a foreigner that has to okay, I'm gonna try and fix this on the fly. I'm thinking maybe it says, how could a foreigner that has to possibly fix their status could enter the IT world in the US? Simple answer, we are not qualified to discuss immigration related hiring practices. That would be an attorney or an HR specialist that specializes in that area. I wish we were, but then that goes back to what we're good at. We're good at one thing. I'm joking. We're good at multiple things, but that is a very special. That's a very special niche, and you need to. We want to make sure you get the right information.
Yeah, it is an immigration attorney thing. If it's related to a work-related skills gap, it's having the essential skills that we can't hire for in the U.S., which is quite a lot, because we can't hire the people for these roles. We can't fill them, and it's so bad trying to fill these jobs that we typically sponsor H-1B visas to bring people in because we don't have enough people that can do the job. That's how bad it is, the shortage. It's just getting challenging to hire people because they don't have the skills, and that's what we're talking about.
Paul asks, how do we deal with employment gaps? Most times people end up putting fillers like voluntary post. Well, that's actually better than creating a fake job. So
yeah,
if you did volunteer work, short answer, it depends.
Yeah.
Long answer, I'll let Mike start, and then I'll add in if I think.
Yeah. So I think here's the thing: we want to know how you addressed it. And what I mean by this, are you sitting on the sofa eating Cheetos and bonbons all day? Or the fact that you've got a gap in employment, did you do it because you had a health issue you had to remedy? In which case, that's a good answer for it, which is fine. If something happened at your last job, what have you done? Did you stay home? Did you learn a new skill? Did you get new certifications? Did you attend different training sessions? What was it that you did in this gap that you can show productivity that shows that you are a go-getter, that you are a fighter, that you will do anything to be the best? That's the question that I would want. I mean, I've had a gap on my resume. I had an injury and couldn't walk for several years, and I had a gap on my resume, and I was supposed to go take a distinguished architect job, which I turned down to run this company. But they didn't care about the gap. They were like, what did you do here? And I said, well, as it turned out, I was in an accident. I couldn't walk. I went to physical therapy for 7 hours a day. While I was doing that, I got this many people jobs. I trained this many people, and I did this. And they were like, oh, wow. Yeah. Like, all right, cool. So you're even better than before. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I did. So there's that. So really the key is having a justification for why you have the gap. Look, things happen in life. And if for some reason something happened, what did you do about it so that it either wouldn't happen again, or what did you do about it to build a better life and a better future? So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the survivor. What did you do when something challenging happened? That's what I would typically do. But if it's related to taking care of a family member or something, just build a good explanation around it. Or create professional development time, or, you know, if you were with us, for example, you'd have an internship where you'd put cloud architect associate, and that way you'd have something on your resume until you were hired. And then I'll end up doing references, typically speaking, when an employer asks, as long as I know the people in the class. But, you know, that's the thing. But put something on there. Don't just leave it blank. And put down. And if you had to have something, put something down that's explainable that people would relate to and understand that's true.
All right. And so for the next couple of questions, I put a free guide in the chat box for you for our architect career guide, because the next couple of questions are tied to that. So we've got this one. How could someone become a really good architect in a short time and better himself in the long term? What path would you suggest to take?
So, Winslow, there's realistically two paths career path can take where you could bifurcate your career. You could ultimately stay in the more technical side of architecture, which will be limiting to your salary, where you would go from architect to senior architect to principal architect, distinguished architect, that path. And you can do that. The other path is you become an architect, you enhance your enterprise architecture skills, you enhance your business acumen skills, and then you move into enterprise architect, chief architect, CIO, or other VP level roles, which are in architecture or things. So if you're looking to optimize your salary, it's going to be much more related to your business acumen. That's why I went to business school. That's why I have so much executive training, because it took my architect over the next top. And that's why I have that elite program that we run, which has got all that extra business stuff to take you from a regular architect into those bigger, more elite roles. So the question becomes is which is going to be more interesting to you? You find that you love cybersecurity and you want to go down that cybersecurity and become a principal architect there where you're the technical expert. Or do you want to be the person that's very, very good at digital transformation and enhancing business performance and leading large teams? Now, that person could earn hundreds of thousands of dollars more than the more technical person, but we need both. And both are totally acceptable. The question is, what's going to make you happy? Spending your day with the C-suite, because no matter what, you're still going to have to interact with the C-suite. But in the enterprise architect role, you're going to be more at the C-suite, talking to business leaders, re-architecting business processes, facilitating meetings. That's more enterprise architecture work. Whereas the principal architect work would be participating in, say, an internet and working group, presenting at various technical conferences, becoming brought in as a subject matter expert. I've done both roles. I started in principal architect roles and then moved into these executive roles. And whatever makes you happy. Best career options is learning business, though, and getting great at it.
All right, so let's see. So following up in that same vein, we've got. Oh, I thought I had another one. Okay, never mind. Okay, so, oh yeah. Following in that same vein, given the disconnect in job descriptions, what core competencies should I focus on developing to make a successful transition into enterprise architecture within the cloud domain?
So first, we got to get it out of the cloud domain with regards to enterprise architecture, which means you need to understand business. You need to understand financial performance, balance sheets, financial statements. You need to understand how to speak to the C-suite, how to have the executive presence that the C-suite takes you care of, how to give presentation at conferences, how to lead a team of 50 architects, how to create a business case. Because what are you going to do in an enterprise architect job? I got a list of 50 of my favorite things that we do that we write down that I wrote down for you. So if I say this, I think it'll help you understand it. Develop and maintain enterprise architecture frameworks. Create a technology roadmap that's aligned with an organization's business objectives, which means you got to understand their business objectives, which means you need to be a master of business. Analyze IT systems and infrastructure. Identify areas of improvement in business processes and IT systems. So that means business process reengineering. Developing IT governance policies and procedures. So that means leading and creating how an organization will manage and lead across an organization. Aligning IT initiatives with overall business strategy. That means you need to understand business strategy and the impacts these technology things can do. Manage architecture documentation. Conducting a gap analysis between what you have now versus what you need in the current architecture to the to-be architecture. Overseeing system integration efforts, for example, developing and enforcing architecture standards and best practices. Leading architecture review boards, again, more leading. Facilitating communication between the IT people and the tech people, which means you're going to have to learn good liaison skills. Developing impact analysis of various IT initiatives, developing ROI modeling and cost benefit analysis of a various solution, what it's going to provide for the business, the expected value of the opportunity, which opportunity should the organization invest in, so that you can show that your opportunity is better investment than something else, because the organization can't spend their money in two places. It's called opportunity cost. You'll be mentoring and developing younger, more junior people. You'll be evaluating with your team and selecting appropriate technology platforms. That means vendor management skills. Managing vendor relationships for IT systems. Again, more vendor management. You'll be developing disaster recovery and business continuity planning, which means learning how a business operates, critical business processes, key components of the business. They can't go down. The cost of downtime, you'll be calculating a lot of that. So then, for example, you'll be participating in strategic planning sessions, overseeing migration strategies, managing an IT portfolio, and prioritizing investments based on the projected value that you'll get out of an investment, conducting an architecture maturity assessment, developing metrics to measure the architecture's effectiveness on, say, financial performance, leading proof of concepts, doing knowledge transfers. Are you getting a theme here? They're all executive, all executive, all executive. They're all business. So that's what you need to learn. You need to either get an MBA or get training from someone like us that teaches these skills, but they're not going to be skills you're going to learn on your own. You're just going to know on your own. But they're very valuable skills, by the way.
All right. So if you all were here 2 weeks ago on Friday when we did some mock resume and interviews based off of resumes, we had a gentleman named Jonathan, and he's gotten back to us in reference to a mock interview and resume critique that we did 2 weeks ago. The suggestions worked, and he landed an interview. It was supposed to be a 15-minute interview, and it turned into a 55-minute interview. And the company is sending my resume to the government client. He was particularly looking for government-related work, or his background favored that. But going from a 15-minute, turning your 15-minute interview into a 55-minute interview is a good sign. Wouldn't you agree, Mike?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
You know, here's what happens. We plan for 15 minutes on the interview, and the reason we plan for it is after the first 3 minutes, we already had enough in 99% of the cases, so we're just buying time for the next 12 minutes.
Yeah.
When you go on that interview and they like you, and then they keep talking to you, and then, by the way, I'd like you to meet Bob, Sally, Charlie, and Mary along the way. And then they say words like, you'll probably be working with this person. That's how you know you're going to get hired. So that's, generally speaking, an extremely good sign. Not because you didn't stop talking and never knew when to best stop babbling, but it's because they kept you because they wanted you.
All right. So we got about 10 minutes left. So let's see if we can get through these questions.
I'll get through them.
At
least these.
I like a challenge. All right. My thing keeps jumping around over here. Okay, here we go. No, it jumped again. Okay. Here we go. If anyone is having both master's graduation, cybersecurity, and cloud architecture knowledge, which job option will be good for future?
Okay, so if you're saying which master's degree would I get, I would never do a master's degree in technology. I would get a master's degree in business, because when you come out of the master's degree in cybersecurity or cloud, you're still going to have to learn them from scratch. I've taken in so many people that have gotten master's degrees in cloud computing, and we have to begin them from scratch. And but the good news is you have a degree which looks great. So the bigger question is, what would you prefer to do? Would you prefer to work in security, or would you prefer to architecture? And then it's a matter of getting the right skills of doing it. So the reason I say not a master's in cybersecurity and I say an MBA is because as an architect, we're not going to be touching the technology itself. We're not going to be focused on code or things that people might learn. We're going to be focused on designing a strategy, determining the organization's cost of downtime, developing and coordinating a cybersecurity policy, determining the organization's end-to-end encryption, their end-to-end compute, their end-to-end network security, their demilitarized zones, their identity systems, their source systems, their SIEM systems, their employees, their employee training, their disaster recovery, modeling, planning, training, testing, simulations, all of that stuff, and none of it's going to be covered in school. But many of those skills to get you there are actually covered in a master's in business. But if I had a master's in cybersecurity, great. I would take it upon myself to learn cybersecurity. I would get a CISSP as my basic intro to cybersecurity, a CISM, a CCSP, and that would give me 30 to 40% of what I needed. You probably have another 10% if you have the master's in cybersecurity. And then I would learn those other skills. And I'd take myself down the path with a $200,000 to $300,000 cybersecurity architect role. By comparison, if I was very interested in cloud architecture, I would learn all the networking, data center, and cloud things. I would learn all the business, all the executive, all the leadership, all the sales, and all what you need for both jobs. And I'd get myself a great cloud architecture job, which over a period of time, I might start out at 150 to 200. That's normally where most people we see start out in the first job. And then they can go up to $400,000 or $500,000 and $600,000 a year later when they have those business executive skills. So the bigger question is what you want. The other reason I would say MBA versus a master's in tech is the difference between a high-paid architect and a low-paid architect is usually based upon their business acumen and their ability to exercise influence on decision makers and sell a product. And you're going to get a lot more out of that in an MBA than you would be in a master's degree. Now, if you said I wanted to do engineering, it might be a different discussion. But for architecture, cybersecurity architecture, cloud architecture, best jobs ever. All you have to figure out is, do you want to be more of a generalist, or do you want to be a specialist on one technology? Cloud architect covers everything, including security, networking, data, AI. So it's a generalist. A security architect is a specialist that just focuses on security. What's more interesting to you? Both will get you to your goals. And I've gotten people to both goals many, many times, and they love both jobs.
All right. So the next one, what is the lowest pay that should be expected in these architecture roles so we can expect to be paid what we are worth?
Over the years, I'd say the majority of our people got roles that pay between 150 and 409. Now, Paul, I did have a perfume sales rep who trained with us, and he was about 40% through his training. And the sales rep got given an opportunity to become an associate solutions architect, engineer, something like that, where they were going to pay him $70,000 a year to train him for the job. And as soon as he got the job, they were going to give him a $140,000, $150,000 job. It was a good job. He was a very smart man, and he approached Chris and I and said, should I take the low job and get paid to study, or should I wait for a high-paid job later? And Chris and I basically said, well, since you just started here and just got here, you already have someone that's willing to pay for your training. Take the training, take the job. And then after that, keep coming, keep learning more additional leadership skills. So there's that. I'm less concerned on the exact initial pay you actually get on your first job. I'm more concerned that you get a job where you're going to be successful, that you can build a track record that you could do for a year or two, where they're going to be patient with you. So, but I would say 150 is about the lowest I've actually seen in one of our graduates that I know about. There could be some lower ones that I've heard over the years that they just didn't tell me about. But generally speaking, that's probably about where you would start, the lowest I've seen. Would you agree with that from what we've seen, Chris?
Yep, absolutely. All right. What are the most underestimated skills or traits and consider transitioning professional apart when pursuing enterprise architect opportunities? If we're talking about underestimated skills from your point of view, the candidate's point of view, the person that's trying to get the job, anything non-technical is underestimated.
Yep.
Everybody thinks it's tech. It's not tech. It's business, leadership, communication, soft skills, emotional intelligence, information gathering, communication. I think I already said communication. I'll say communication again, and I'll say communication again, and I'll say communication again. Communication, listening, all of those. I want to say project management, but that's not the right word. But managing stuff and people and things. I can't think of the right word. But the people ask me, like, what do I do? I'm like, I make things happen. There you go. The ability to make things happen.
Yeah. It's all the business skills that everybody doesn't get. They don't get it. Your whole job is to organize the company's people, processes, and technology. And then they get a tech certification. Well, an organization may have 100,000 employees or 200,000. And you're going to affect the way they work with your enterprise architecture. So you're going to have to understand that business. You're going to understand where its pain points, understand the intersections between the business units, the connectivity between the business units, how the systems talk to each other. Now, it's not just that. What's the process? How do you create a process to make a change? How do you create the documentation? Is it sounding like a pencil pusher job? It is. This is a pencil pusher job. When I do enterprise architecture jobs, I take off my golf shirt, I put on my Armani suit, and I become an executive. And I speak like an executive, and I walk and talk like an executive. So that's really, really the key of what we're really talking about. In everything I gave you, and I didn't give you all of them, but things like developing mobile and digital strategies, overseeing enterprise data warehouse, overseeing business intelligence tools, thinking about how you can conduct industry health checks. Where's the industry going? What are the technologies of the future? What technologies of the future are going to best solve our clients' problems? What systems do we need? What vendors do we need? What tools do we need? It's all business, 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 and more business. And it's the one thing people don't get. And that's why I say, you know, we created the business acumen program you need. If you're not with us, go get an MBA, because you're going to need I'd say 30 or 40% of those skills that you would glean in an MBA. We just teach you those 30, 40% of the skills you need and then throw out the rest because you don't need them. And that way we can get you hired in a reasonable period of time. But you really need those kind of skills.
All right. So Jonathan was the gentleman that was with us a couple of weeks ago doing the resume review. If you recall, he's asking, looking towards the future, transitioning from a network engineer to security, network security or security architect, should I still go through the CCNP curriculum as a refresher?
So your goal is to be a cloud security architect, right? So if my goal was to be a cloud security architect, I would get trained to be a cloud security architect. I would skip the CCNP and do the CISSP. As that's really what I'm looking for. Now, regarding the protocols, most of the protocols aren't really covered very well in the CCNP. They're really not. And, you know, after interviewing thousands of CCNPs and asking them how the OSPF finite state machines or what type of LSAs exist in various things, and what could we do, for example, if we've got an overabundance of TCP traffic and we need to prevent congestion, they typically don't know it. So what I'd probably do to master if I wanted to be a cloud security architect, I would basically learn security, and I would learn the network, and I would learn the data center in much more depth. And what I mean by that is that would mean reading the book, Internet Routing Architecture from Bassam Halabi, maybe reading Jeff Doyle's book on how packets and things are done, routing TCP/IP1, that volume 1, that was really good. I'd probably look at OSPF in there at minimum, but I'd say the first half of that Jeff Doyle book would be really, really good. And that's probably for you enough of the refresher because you've done some networking work for all these years. And you would be able to get that from those two books. And actually, if you wanted to get really good, read Jeff Doyle's TCP/IP Routing Volume 3. Those 3 books with Bassam Halabi would probably, from Bassam Halabi and the 2 Jeff Doyle books and Carol books together, would probably get you more than what you need. But for cloud security, I'm focusing on my business. I'm focused on my executive skills. I'm focusing on disaster recovery planning. I'm focusing on what my demilitarized zones look like. I'm focusing on how QoS could example.
He decided to add some more information now that changes it. I'm targeting a network engineer position so I can pay for the training to get me to an architect.
Do the CCNP, yes.
Thank you. Now that we have all the information, there you go. There's your answer. All right. Last question. This is in response to you already responded in the chat box, and then they followed up with this. Yeah. Can one prepare for the enterprise architect role in your program in 3 months with intense focus, but no prior experience other than prior IT sales career experience? I'm going to let Mike give the long answer. I'm going to give the short answer. There's no shortcuts.
Yeah. And I'm going to say, Mr. AB, probably not. I would say that we usually have about 8 to 12 months to get someone hired. Now, look, you could be like me and read 1,000 pages a day and be able to remember 100% of it and be able to do it in 3 or 4 months. And I've had 1 or 2 people that actually did, but I don't think it's realistic and feasible for me to say yes. I think I could say that if you really worked hard, that in 6 months, if you could study for 12 hours a day, you'd be there. But if you couldn't study for 20 hours a day and you couldn't retain information for 12 hours a day, you know, realistically speaking, it's probably going to be 8 to 12 months. I want to put this in context with the kind of knowledge we need and the amount of reasons. We have 1,000 hours of training in our cloud program, and this one has even more into it. We get paid as enterprise architects $250,000 a year. If we get a chief architect role, we can be dealing with $500,000 to $800,000 a year. Why am I mentioning that? Typically, when you have a job that pays over $200,000 a year, normally speaking, you either went to medical school and took $500,000 of debt. You went to law school and spent 7 years and took $500,000 of debt. And we've repeatedly gotten people really great architect jobs in about 8 to 12 months, which is literally speaking less than the 12 years to become a physician or the 7 years to become an attorney without the $500,000 of expense. So is it possible? Yes, anything's possible, but I don't want to say that I think it's realistic or reasonable. I would love to tell you that I can get you hired, and I really believe I will, but I think it would take 8 to 12 months, and I just always want to be straightforward. Chris, you may have a perspective on this as well.
I gave my perspective at the beginning.
Okay, no shortcuts.
No shortcuts.
Gotcha.
You're not going to shortcut anything. If you're able to do it in 3 months, you're able to do it in 3 months. But if you're not able, everybody learns differently. Everybody has a different ability to do intense training. If you put together a plan of intense training and then life happens, what happens? Are you going to be done in 3 months? Yeah. No. Your wife gets into a catastrophic car accident and you have to deal with everything. Like, no, I mean, your intense 3 months is different than Mike's intense 3 months, and it's different than my intense 3 months. And your ability to retain information is going to be different than everybody else. So, all right, everybody, we do have to end. We're already pushing up against the next commitment. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. If we didn't get the opportunity to answer your question, I'm just going to put our email address in the chat box. Your email will get to us, I promise. They all get to me and Mike. I'm going to put our email address in the chat box. Please feel free to send us an email so that we can answer your question. Because we want to be able to answer anybody's questions. Make sure I spelled that right. info@GoCloudCareers. Yep. So I want to thank everybody. I hope you enjoyed the conversation about job descriptions and how they impact your career. And I hope you enjoyed the opportunity to hear our response to the questions from everybody. So I want to tell you Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year, everything in between. Have a great weekend. Enjoy some college football if you're a college football fan. If you're a pro football fan, whatever. I don't deal with pro football and any other sports that might be going on right now. Have fun with them. I'm going to be working my butt off putting together some new content for all of you. So is Mike, and so is Mark, and so is Alonzo. We've got a lot of new exciting things coming next month or next year.
Absolutely. So, next year. Wow.
Mike, tell us goodbye.
So I'll close goodbye. I'll actually touch 2 questions in my answer goodbye. Preb, cybersecurity architect, same job. Cloud security architect, same job as the other ones. It's just it's only on the cloud. So a security architect is a bigger role because it's cloud and non-cloud. Everything else is the same. Paul, if you're in our program, you've got a chance to actually fill in your goals and get guidance on your career plan, and also present your next architecture so we can give you feedback and tell you when you're ready and all the opportunities we have in cloud. So I really hope we gave you what you needed to know about job descriptions. I actually gave you the cloud architect job description, the real one. I actually read off the what we do as enterprise architects, which is kind of an enterprise architect job description, and you can see how they're different. Chris and I have given you a substantial amount of evidence showing you why job descriptions are bad. We also told you how to find the right job description so you can get any job you want on the cloud, off the cloud. You know exactly what to do. Hope you enjoyed this discussion. I hope everyone has a wonderful week and a wonderful holiday season, regardless of any and all the holidays you celebrate. I love all holidays. I celebrate them all. Thank you so much. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe and hit the bell to be notified of new things. and give me a hashtag. Cloud job descriptions are a joke. It's good for me. It kills me that you're still awake. It's good for the algorithm, and it's good in every way. Take care, everyone, and I hope to see you really soon.
Bye, everybody. Have a good weekend.